Well, it's time now for French Connections, our weekly look at the intricacies of life here in France. And this week, we're going to take a step back from the news to focus on a French institution that we talk a lot about in the news. That's the justice system. So today, we're going to take a look at how it works and some of the particularities then about the French legal system. Hi, Flo.
Hey, Erin. Now, this might sound really boring, but don't change the channel because it's actually very useful and quite interesting, too, because we do talk about the justice system and trials all the time on France 24. Recently, there was the Petitcourt trial, there was the Sarkozy trial. It can be confusing even for French people. So we have about 5 minutes, which isn't much. This is going to be the extremely abridged version of the French justice system for dummies. And the first thing you need to know is that the French justice system is based on civil law. So it relies primarily on written codes like the Code Civil, the Code Pénal. It's not a common law system like you'll find in the UK or in the United States. In France, the system aims to apply the law as it's written rather than interpret it through past judgments and precedent.
So there is also some important vocabulary flow that you need to really master when you're talking about the French judicial system.
Absolutely, and I will try to keep the legalese to a minimum, but one term that comes up a lot is magistrat. So a magistrat is a civil servant, a fonctionnaire, who's in charge of handling the affairs of the Department of Justice. But this is actually an umbrella term that covers two things. You have les magistrats du siège, so sitting judges who issue decisions in court. They don't have a gavel, though, like in the United States. And you also have les magistrats du parquet, so these are prosecutors, actually, who represent society and the state and request penalties, but they do not judge.
Now, while we're speaking legalese, Flo, in France, there is a special judge as well who's responsible specifically for conducting the investigation that comes before a criminal trial.
That's right. And this is unique to the French justice system. And we talk about it a lot on France 24, but you might not know what it is. This is a juge d'instruction. So it's a little bit confusing because, it's called a judge, but these judges do not conduct trials themselves. In fact, their role ends once the investigation is complete. But they have a very important role within the French justice system because they're in charge of directing and supervising police investigations and deciding whether or not to charge a suspect. This is called a mise en examen. And they decide whether or not this case will go to trial or be dismissed. And importantly, in France, they gather both incriminating evidence but also exonerating evidence. And so this is different from, say, in the United States where the prosecutor, the district attorney, will, which is representing the state, gathers only incriminating evidence.
Now, if we're turn to some similarities to other countries, here in France as well, different courts here, different levels of disputes and crimes.
That's right. Now, this is, again, a summary, but let's look at some of the very basic ones. You have civil courts that handle disputes between individuals and organizations, contract, family law, property, etc. And then you have criminal courts, les tribunaux pénaux. These handle offenses committed against society. And as you can see, there are different levels here according to what has been committed. If it's a minor offense, it's called a contravention. It's handled by the tribunal de police. A mid-level crime, theft, assault, it's called a délit in French, and it's handled by the tribunal correctionnel. And if it's a very serious offense, murder, rape, terrorism, this is called a crime in French, and it's handled by the top-level criminal court, the Cour d'assises. This is something we talk a lot about in the news. Two other courts you hear a lot about are also the Cour de cassation. This is the highest judicial court, which really reviews whether the law has been applied or not, and the Conseil d'État, this is the highest administrative court. Now, if you commit a serious crime and go in front of the Cour d'assises, well, you will face a jury in France. It'll be about 6 to 9 people who will decide whether or not you're guilty according to what they call their intime conviction, their internal belief, and then you'll have 3 judges who will decide what your sentence is. Any French citizen that's aged 23 and above can be chosen to be a jury. They're chosen at random from electoral lists. And many say it's a life-changing experience.
Qu'est-ce que ça a changé en vous?
Déjà, un autre regard sur la société et sur la justice et vraiment une prise de conscience que, disons que juger est un acte d'une extrême difficulté. Il faut aussi s'interroger si, en soi-même, si la prison, c'est la peine adaptée au crime commis.
Now, that former juror there, Flo, mentioned penalties. The French Penal Code then outlines a range of penalties, depending, of course, on the nature of the offense and the circumstances surrounding it as well.
That's right. Minor infractions, well, they tend to be, they're fines or the go-to penalty. But more serious crimes result in imprisonment. The maximum sentence for a crime in France is 30 years, which is lower compared to other countries. But for very serious crimes, for instance, terrorism or genocide, life imprisonment can be imposed. Importantly, in France, though, sentences are not cumulative. For instance, if you are found guilty of several crimes, well, you will serve the penalty that's the longest, but you won't add them up together, like, say, in the United States, where people can be, sentenced to hundreds of years behind bars. Now, also importantly, in France, the death penalty was abolished in 1981.
Now, the French justice system is, of course, centralized. It's public. Court costs are minimal, but it's often criticized for being really very slow, bureaucratic as well. Judges face heavy workloads.
That's right. And that's kind of a good summary of French public service in general. Egalitarian, but quite slow. And a lot of it comes down to a lack of personnel. For instance, those magistrats we were talking about at the very beginning, well, there aren't really enough of them. And so this means that people can wait years before going to court. And many say they have a hard time getting on with their lives before going to court.
Je ne peux pas faire de projet, ma vie est suspendue à un jugement qui n'arrive pas. Et je paye des impôts pour avoir des hôpitaux, des autoroutes, des écoles, mais aussi pour avoir des délais rendus par la justice dans des délais raisonnables. Et oui, c'est un manque de respect de la citoyenne que je suis.
Je suis en colère. En colère contre la loi française par rapport à ça. Je dis pourquoi ils attendent si longtemps?
So like in other public sectors like healthcare or education, there is a chronic lack of means that unfortunately really can impact the trust that people have in the French justice system.
Florence Villeminot, thank you very much for that very great roundup, if I must say so myself, having studied French law, of course, of the French justice system. That's all the time we have then for today's show, but do be sure to check out previous episodes of French Connections, of course, on our website at france24.com.